Hey you, do you wish you had a proven way to level up your communication skills?
Yes.
How about your self-confidence?
Yes.
Your ability to navigate conflict?
Dr. Papa!
It's group therapy.
No!
Nobody wants to go to group therapy. It's basically a meme for practitioners. Delivering group therapy to people in a way they will seek out and engage with is a massive challenge. Dr. MeganConnell has answered this challenge from an unorthodox but profoundly powerful place, from behind the DM screen. She is a board-certified psychologist, and she uses tabletop role-playing games in her practice, a method she describes in her book as applied GMing. In this video, we talk about why tabletop role-playing games are so powerful for our mental health and emotional well-being. She answers your questions about the obstacles we face running and playing the game, and she lets us in on a secret that unleashes the power of healthy communication at the gaming table. But first, you ready for a little lightning round?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. Milestone or XP?
Milestone.
Okay. Sandbox or railroad?
Sandbox.
You get one level in a D&D class in real life.
Ooh, wizard, you get the better cantrips.
Okay, wizard for cantrips. I've noticed forming bonds with others as a neurodivergent person comes a lot easier, especially when you're role-playing a character with friends at the table. Why is that?
Yeah, this is something I got to talk about it in my book a little bit. For folks who have specifically autism spectrum disorder, ASD, a lot of their brain power is on, am I allowed to say this? Am I not allowed to say this? Should I go over here? Should I not go over here? What's going on? Am I supposed to talk? Am I talking too much? Am I talking too loud? Am I moving, and just all of that stuff. And then when we can reduce that noise, suddenly we have all this extra brain power that's freed up to just kind of be in the moment and to enjoy. And so I really think that's one of the big powers, especially for folks on the autism spectrum with playing tabletop games, is having that format and that structure that really can calm things down and help you just be yourself a little bit more.
You're not self-regulating or masking, and you just get to kind of be a person with your friends without all of this extra protocol.
Finding people who share your geeky special interest is so awesome. There is at least that common thread that you have with everybody, and then it's easier to show your differences, right? It's like when we feel that we're, at least a part of us is very well accepted in a group, it becomes much easier to open up about the other parts of us that we're not sure if they'll be accepted or not. In Geeks Like Us, we define being a geek as being unapologetically enthusiastic about something. And it could be pretty much anything. It can be sports, it can be space, it can be D&D, it can be fantasy, it can be writing, right? It's
Pencils.
finding the pencils. Yeah. There's so many things you can be enthusiastic about. And when you find other people who are enthusiastic about that stuff and love that stuff the same way you do, it's just amazing. A lot of us, for our geeky interests, they've been belittled, dismissed, told they don't matter. But then to be around a bunch of people who celebrate that, it's really awesome. And it can be very relaxing, and it helps us kind of look around and understand the world a little bit more.
So how is that going to translate to something like therapy?
How do we get our clients to come into the practice, to be in a group setting, and to be in therapy? They're not going to do treatment as usual for the most part because people don't like to do group therapy. If we can get them to come to group and engage in this game, and oh, by the way, they also learn some skills that are useful and build strong peer connections and have these moments where they have a safe place to process and talk about things that are going on, that's a really big win.
John Kailee 7838 asks, I'm just learning to DM. I was also diagnosed with primarily inattentive type ADHD 2 years ago at the age of 33. My question would be, how does one get over the learning curve hump and actually write something down?
Who says you have to? My business partner in his therapeutic groups, he doesn't have consistency, and that's actually by design. The rules change day to day. What's important changes day to day, and that's the kind of game he loves to run. And it's just finding what works for you. And if, writing things down and coming up with an overall arching campaign kind of thing doesn't work for you, then don't do it. Something we got to keep in mind too is when you are new to being a game master, for the most part, you're going to suck. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I totally sucked the first several games I ran. I was not a very good dungeon master. I've become a much better dungeon master over time. I think the problem is, we have all these amazing live play shows that we can watch. Matt Mercer's been a DM since he was in middle school. Brendan Lee Mulligan, I think, has been a consistent dungeon master since he was in college or high school. We don't see people who are just kind of newly coming into it and kind of working on it. It's okay to get your feet under you. I think the other thing too is when we are new to a skill, be open to feedback. It's something that in my Sunday night games that are just personal for fun, we've started doing, where we ask the DM, like, hey, what can we do to be better players? Was there anything going on tonight that you didn't like? And then we give him feedback too of like, this was a frustrating game. It felt like there was something important that we were supposed to find, but we all had no clue what the heck it was. And we kept feeling like we were missing whatever the important thing was. And I don't know what kind of clue you were trying to lay down, but we did not pick it up. It's incredibly helpful feedback. Or for him to say like, I don't see you all taking notes and like, I'm trying to give you lore, but like, if you're not keeping track of it, it's really frustrating for me that I put time into prepping this and you're not taking that into account, right? And that stuff is said with love and respect. It's not said with frustration or anger. It's like, we all want to have the best experience at the table for everybody. And so that means making sure that we're all showing up and being there for each other.
One thing that I really enjoy about my adult Dungeon Master career, there's just so many different ways to run this game, and I've seen so many, and I've played in so many different games. And if somebody says, like, I like this flavor and not that flavor, it doesn't mean I'm the world's worst chef. It just means I got to go back to the spice rack and try something else. And also, I didn't come up with D&D Twitch streamers. That is still novel to me. Comparing yourself to television quality productions is thankfully something that I didn't have to overcome to start DMing. An anonymous question asker asks, what benefits have you seen from tabletop role-playing games for your own mental health and well-being?
There's been a lot. Like, that's how I stumbled into all of this. I learned stuff about me through playing, and that's what started me down this pathway of using applied tabletop role-playing games. The fact that our D&D game needs to be scheduled, and I'm relying on a bunch of people to meet at the same time, same place, to have a game, has been so powerful for my mental health, because that means I have set aside 4 hours a week for self-care. So learning how to take care of myself in that way. Certainly have gotten to practice a lot of conflict resolution myself too. Because there have been a lot of issues with both between the characters and the players in the group, because we're humans and we butt heads sometimes. The communication piece and the connecting with people. I think one of the things the game really highlights is places that I still need to grow and skills I still need to learn. Stuff will come up and I'm like, big reaction in here happening. And to be clear here, I don't ask my DM to be my therapist. I go to my therapist.
I think that translates really well to our next question from another anonymous question asker. How can I communicate my needs at the table without feeling like a burden?
Well, so the feeling like a burden piece, probably something to work on in therapy. Again, I'm going to say something that might sound weird here. It is a burden. Asking for something you need is burdensome. However, if you're talking to people who care about you and are wanting you to be a part of that, hopefully it's not too much of a burden. Let's say with dyscalculia, having to add up the dice, that's causing too much anxiety, too much frustration. Is it a burden to provide a chart for them rather than having to do mental math? Yeah. Am I willing to do it as well? Yes. Just because it's a burden doesn't mean it's bad. People who love you and care about you likely are going to want to help. There are reasonable limits, but if your ask isn't all that unreasonable, it's not a big deal. The stuff where we feel like we're not allowed to ask for what we need help with, those are things that are really helpful to work on in therapy.
To share a little bit of my therapy experience without getting too detailed, one of my major goals for 2023 was like, don't be afraid to ask for help. Similarly, like, don't be afraid to set a boundary with someone. I'm now finding myself kind of at the end of this year overwhelmed, looking back at the positive overwhelm, looking back at the number of times that I did ask for help or I did set a boundary. Those boundaries were honored without any kind of caveat or stipulation or pushback. The times that I asked for help was either yes or no, but thank you for asking, or no with no kind of how dare you?
Yeah. And I think that's a really important experience, right? Of like that you don't get the how dare you. It's just like, I would love to be able to do that. I can't. Or just a solid like, nah, I'm not going to do that. That's important information. Like if this person's not able to help you out, you want to know that sooner than later.
Yes. Yeah. You don't, it's on. Like you get off work at 9 p.m. and you're calling at 8:50 for a ride. It would be so awesome for both parties if you knew way earlier, way in advance, and finding myself, I think, on both sides of that, because usually when I establish a boundary, someone else is asking for help, and I'm saying like I don't have the spell slots for that right now, or hey, let me get you to so and so who might be able to do this for you instead. That gal Abatha 2675 asks, what tips do you have for creating a positive experience at the table with multiple neurodivergencies at play?
So this is going to be a bit of a different answer perhaps, but it's not so much about the diagnosis as the people. There's a saying in the autism community of if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism.
Yes.
Right? It looks very different for different people. It is a spectrum. Same thing with dyslexia, dyscalculia, all of these things. I have dyslexia, but I'm okay at reading most of the time. I can read fiction stuff, no problem. Give me technical stuff and my brain goes, that is the technical term for what happens in my brain. Have that human contact and say like, okay, so what would be helpful for you in this game? So if you have somebody who gets anxious when they need to make decisions, saying like, I want you to enjoy yourself. Like, what's going to help you with decision making? And offer some solutions. I have a series on Geeks Like Us called Psychology at the Table, where I go through a lot of common diagnoses and how you can be a good friend and game master to people with those diagnoses. It's not about being a clinician. It's about like understanding different tools that you can use to help your friends enjoy themselves at the table. For people with high anxiety, instead of saying, what do you want to do? Saying, do you want to go left or do you want to go right? Give a forced choice. That helps a lot. For somebody with ADHD who tends to fidget and move around a lot, maybe asking like the other players, like, is that going to be distracting to you? And then if so, what are some things that we can give that person to fidget with that will be a little quieter and not distracting? Or finding a group ideally where everybody can fidget and it's fine and nobody cares, right? Finding what works for the people you have rather than the diagnoses that they have.
I think identifying those needs that's kind of the whole journey for any D&D group. Even on more mundane levels, like this person needs a little more tactical combat. This person really wants to strut and stomp and snarl as their character and really kind of, do the theater thing. Piecing that together for everybody at the table, I think, is the sort of ultimate game master goal.
Yes.
Tony, 2309 asks, do you have any tips for people at the table who have slow processing speed? I
think one of the things to recognize as a DM is when the players ask a question, we can feel like the world stretch, like the pause is 20 minutes long, when really it's maybe like 3 seconds. It's also incredibly okay to say, that is a really great question. Let me think about that for a minute and then I'll get back to you. Right. I think people are much more appreciative of like, I'm going to take a moment to actually come up with a thoughtful answer to your question than just, I'm going to rapid fire make up something because I feel like I need to keep this imaginary pace going. Again, understanding what things help you and what tools help you and utilizing those things. Like, again, I've shared a few times I'm dyslexic. One of the big tools that helps me is audiobooks. I am able to be very well read because I can listen to books. And if I'm doing something where I need to read, that is a question I will ask is like, is this available as an audiobook or is there audio of this that I can listen to because that's how I learn best? And if the answer is yes, awesome, amazing. We can go forward with that. If it's no, then I got to kind of reevaluate and think through what can I do with this?
I don't know how much you had to do with the decision, but Rebecca Lee's narration of the audiobook was great. And that option for an audiobook for something like this is really helpful.
I really pushed the publisher to make an audiobook. It was really important to me that this be available as an audiobook from the start. So, and the folks at audiobooks.com have been awesome with making it, and they did a great job. Obviously, it is available through Audible, but if you could support the people who published it, it's awesome too.
For me, that's the difference between am I going to read something or not sometimes, if I'm not like totally in the zone. I find myself, especially lately, in a kind of hybrid position of guy who cares a lot about Dungeons and Dragons, and also I have this community of people who are disproportionately affected by behavioral or emotional disorders or self-identifying with things like autism spectrum disorder or ADHD, and I'm not a mental health care professional. Yeah. These people are really vulnerable with me, and I'm super grateful for that. But where's that line of demarcation where I can point people towards resources where they can get help without making them feel alienated or rejected?
Yeah, that's a really important question, and it's a really hard one to answer, right? Because a lot of it is case by case. Because sometimes we feel very empowered to talk to strangers, just being able to say a lot of things that are on our mind, and it's almost like a way of laying down our burdens. And sometimes that's all we need to do, and we feel great, right? But then sometimes people have bigger problems and they need more help than we can offer. It's sort of an interesting thing that is an aside of this, but it's also part of why I became a psychologist. I was actually a grocer at Trader Joe's, and I had regular customers who would come into my line and sort of use me as their de facto therapist. And I was like, wow, if people are just going to do this to me, I think I should get paid a little bit better than $10 an hour. So I went to school for that. And, there's just a lot that we can do with simply validating people, of just saying like, wow, that's a lot. Are you doing okay? Right. And that's just in that you're doing okay. They're saying no. It's like, well, I'm not a therapist, so I obviously can't help you very much, but like, would it be helpful if and then you can have a boundary as to how much help you're willing to give. We know from studies that it's actually incredibly hard to ask for help when you reach a certain level of distress. And so like, it's almost, and I think we can all, imagine being there. Like, your house is a complete disaster. You have company coming over. You are cleaning. There are other humans in the house who could clean. But rather than asking the other people to help you clean, because now you're going to have to manage them, it's just easier to do it all yourself, right? Which creates a lot more stress load and problems. And so if you have I like to say spell slots instead of spoons, to help people with finding the resources that they need, we can offer that. So looking through resources like Psychology Today, like ZenCare, to help people find appropriate therapists, or to kind of just talk through and say like, what would be helpful? I'm willing to be a friend. I'm willing to send you a text every couple days just to check in, or just say like, I don't know that I can help you with this problem. I'm worried about you and I want to make sure that you get help. So can I help you with trying to find a couple of therapists that you could call? Or something along those lines. I think it's like good to know where your boundaries are and what you're willing to do. If people are really unloading and going, what do you think I should do? It's okay to say like, hey, that's a lot that you're going through and I hear you. As for what you can do, like, I can't say, I'm not in your life. I think like that's something that, therapy can be very helpful with, or, someone in your family, if they have a good supportive family, et cetera, et cetera. Does that kind of make sense and help?
Absolutely. And I think that's also pertinent to the other kind of question that I run into a lot, which is people asking me to audit their games. In a similar role, it's like, oh, I'm not at that table, but yeah. I understand. It sounds really frustrating, and it sounds like you were treated unfairly, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, for player problems with communication, I actually was on a panel at PAX Unplugged talking about how to talk to your players. But it's great advice for just how to have difficult conversations with people, how to bring up things that make us uncomfortable, how to talk about our boundaries. Because like so many times when people are bringing up issues, they haven't done step 1 of the flowchart of D&D problems of talk to them like an adult. Because so many times we don't know how to. Which is a very interesting thing, because so much of the role-playing aspect of TTRPGs is role-playing through conflict, through talking through adversity. And it's like, you're practiced at this because your character is doing it all the time, which also means you're practicing it. Let's take that and actually practice it, at the table of like, hey, DM, I don't like this thing. My DM, who I'm very good friends with, we had a conflict during our first camp. Not a conflict, but there was something that was in the world that was really frustrating to me. And I did confront him about it as like, hey, this is a thing. And like, we talked it through and we kind of came to a mutual understanding, and things pivoted and got a lot better. But if I had talked to him, it never would have gotten better. So learning how to talk and ask questions and to communicate our needs and communicate our frustrations is incredibly important. There's being a great big pushback from my field, specifically in psychology, of like trying not to use psychobabble when talking to people, saying like, I feel like you're gaslighting me, or this is going on. Like, just talk from your own experience. Be able to say like, hey, in the role-playing session last game, I felt really uncomfortable with how we treated X, or how this thing was handled. We don't need to put a label on the types of behavior we think we're seeing or things like that. Just talk about for your own experience, your personal experience of that matter. It's going to be a much more effective conversation, because utilizing those statements where we talk about our own experience, it keeps people open, right? Whereas when we come in and we go, hey, when you do this thing, we're suddenly in a verbal fist fight, and nothing's going to get solved at that point.
So communicating through the language of emotions, rather than saying you're gaslighting me because you're a narcissist, or putting yes. all these kind of like these words that mean very specific and categorical things onto someone's behavior. I think that's If everyone started doing that, though, I don't think we would have any Dungeons & Dragons subreddits. I think they would all go away.
I know, the subreddits would just go away.
Is there anything else you want to discuss or anything that you would like to bring people's attention to or promote?
Well, if you can buy a copy of my book, I'd love you to. It's doing really well and I'm really excited about it. And I'm really hopeful to, revise the edition in a couple of years with research. I hate saying this of an academic book, but you almost play a drinking game of like how often I write more research is needed in the book. And I'm really excited for a day when I can write an edition where I'm like, I get to take all that out because now there is research. That is phenomenal. Also, if you can, check out HealthQuest, hqpsych.com. It's my new practice where I am able to practice and see people in over 30 states. I think it's 39 and maybe 42 next summer, which would be absolutely amazing. We provide a wide array of services. It's also where I do my consultation work. So again, for therapists who are wanting to use TTRPGs and wanting just to ask some questions, again, I offer free 15-minute consultations on a first come, first served basis to answer those kinds of questions for folks.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for your time and for this rad conversation. Hope we get to talk again soon. This was great.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you again to Dr. Connell for having this conversation with me and answering so many of our audience questions. Links to her book, her practice, HealthQuest, and her YouTube channel, Geeks Like Us, will be in the description. If you want to hear more questions that didn't make it into the video, such as how to market and implement applied GMing in your own practice, or how to seek mental health care professional who is properly suited to your needs, the whole hour-long video is on Patreon for all patron levels at patreon.com/ADHDM. If you've ever wondered why Dungeons & Dragons, or tabletop role-playing in general, is so appealing to neurodivergent minds, you'll want to watch this video right here.